At Thanksgiving dinner, my sister found out I had $15 million. And within minutes, my entire family turned on me. No, congrats. No, how did you do it? Just one question. So, what are you gonna give us? Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It all started with a turkey and a tiny slip of the tongue that changed everything. Thanksgiving at my house was always a mix of chaos, laughter, and just the right amount of drama to keep it interesting. My mom would be yelling from the kitchen. My dad would be trying to fix the thermostat again, even though nobody asked him to. And my sister would be hovering over the food like she was hosting a cooking show. Loud conversations, clinking glasses, kids running around. Typical family madness, but this year hit differently. Not because the food was any better or because Aunt Carol finally learned to keep her political opinions to herself. No. This year exploded like a firecracker in a room full of gas. And I was the one holding the match. Without even realizing it, we were all seated around the table. The turkey was golden brown, the mashed potatoes were steaming, and the cranberry sauce was in one of those fancy bowls we only used for real holidays. Plates were being passed, laughter filled the air. For a moment, everything felt normal. And then my phone buzzed. I didn't think anything of it. Probably another Black Friday ad or a spam email about Bitcoin. But as I picked up the phone to glance at the screen, just instinct, I saw the notification. It was from my financial advisor's app. Your $15 million portfolio update is ready. Boom, that was the spark. That one tiny line lit a match under the entire dinner table. I flipped my phone face down almost immediately, hoping no one noticed, but I wasn't quick enough. My sister saw it. Her hand halfway across the table with the mashed potatoes froze. Mid-air, her eyes narrowed in on the screen, smile gone. Fork trembling slightly. Then she asked it 5 words that hit like a hammer on glass. Wait, what's this? Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Like a knife that doesn't need to yell to cut. The room went quiet instantly. Every sound seemed to vanish into thin air. Even the kids went silent, sensing something dramatic was about to unfold. She repeated it louder this time, turning her gaze directly on me. $15 million. I swear, it felt like even the turkey was holding its breath. Every eye turned toward me. My mother looked confused. My father slowly put down his fork. My cousin almost dropped her wine glass. And my aunt, who hadn't said a word since grace, muttered a stunned, "Oh my God." That moment in movies where everything slows down and there's this ringing sound in the background? That was me. Just sitting there blinking, trying to process the fact that my carefully kept secret, one I'd guarded for years, had just been exposed by a stupid push notification. I opened my mouth, tried to form words, but nothing came out. Is that a joke? My sister asked. Like, is this some kind of weird prank? I gave a nervous laugh. The kind you give when you've just been caught red-handed and you don't know whether to run, lie, or confess. It's, complicated. Wrong answer. My sister's expression changed in an instant. Her eyebrows shot up, lips tightened, and her head tilted in that way people do when they're just about to lose it. Complicated? What exactly is complicated about having $15 million and never telling your family? At that moment, it felt like the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. No one spoke. Even the candles on the table flickered like they knew things were about to burn down. My mom was the next to speak, her voice soft but firm. Honey, is that true? You really have that much? I nodded slowly. No more hiding? Yeah, I do. It was like I just announced I was an alien. A millionaire alien. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was heavy. Like everyone was recalibrating their entire perception of me in real time. And I get it. I do. It's not every day you find out your quiet, regular sibling, the one who still drives an old Honda and wears $30 sneakers, is sitting on a massive fortune. But I wasn't ready for what came next, because the shock quickly turned into something else. Something darker. And that's when I realized Thanksgiving would never be the same again. You see, I never planned on hiding my money from my family. I just never wanted it to define our relationship. That's the honest truth. Growing up, we weren't poor, but money was always a sensitive subject. My parents worked hard to make ends meet, and we were raised to appreciate what we had even when what we had wasn't much. My sister and I shared a room until we were in high school. Our vacations were road trips in a borrowed van. Christmas. Gifts were thoughtful, not expensive. Money wasn't evil, but it was always just out of reach. So when I finally made some, I promised myself I'd never let it come between me and the people I loved, but it turns out not talking about it was just as dangerous. Let me take you back a few years. 3 years ago. I was working a standard 9-to-5 tech job, decent pay, stable hours, a cubicle with my name on it, and a manager who mispronounced it every single time. Life was fine, predictable, but I had an idea, a small one. A tool to help freelancers manage their time and bill clients more accurately. It started as a weekend project, me and my laptop, some pizza boxes, late nights, and lots of coffee. I didn't tell my family. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I didn't want to hear the be realistic speech. You know, the 1. Startups are risky. Don't quit your job. What if it fails? So I kept it quiet. Only told one person, my best friend, Jordan, who helped with some of the back-end code. We launched quietly, no big press, no influencers, just word of mouth and cold emails, and then it took off. I'll never forget the first time we hit 10,000 users. I sat in my tiny apartment staring at the screen in disbelief. Then 50,000, then 200,000. A year later, we had companies offering us buyout deals. I still remember thinking, this can't be real. But it was. Eventually, we sold the company for $22 million. I know, crazy, right? After taxes, fees, and reinvesting a chunk into a few other ventures, I ended up with around $15 million sitting across a few different accounts and portfolios. Just like that, my life changed. And yet it didn't, because here's the part. Most people don't understand. I didn't run off and buy a mansion. I didn't switch to luxury cars or start wearing Rolexes. I didn't move to LA or throw parties in Miami. I kept working. Same old office, same creaky desk chair, same $7 lunch from the food truck across the street. I still drove my beat-up Honda Civic with a dented bumper and a broken AC. I still lived in a modest apartment with IKEA furniture and a leaky faucet I never got around to fixing. Why? Because I wanted peace, not pressure, not judgment, not whispers behind my back about how I'd changed. And I especially didn't want my family to start looking at me like a walking A-team dot. It wasn't that I didn't want to help them. I do. But I also knew how fast things can spiral when money becomes the center of attention. I'd seen it happen to people who came into wealth and lost every meaningful relationship they had. The money didn't ruin them. The expectations did. So I told myself I'd wait. I'd share it one day in the right moment. When I felt it wouldn't shift everything. Spoiler alert, I miscalculated. Because now, here we were at Thanksgiving dinner, just another family gathering with too much food and not enough chairs, and a simple push notification had shattered the illusion. $15 million. Portfolio update ready. 6 words that turned my world upside down. As the shock settled around the table, I couldn't even look anyone in the eye. I felt exposed. Like I was suddenly the other. Like I had walked into the room wearing a crown no one knew I owned. I could feel their thoughts without them. Saying a word, how long has he been sitting on this? Why didn't he help us when we were struggling? So he's rich now. What does that mean for us? The silence was unbearable. Part of me wanted to explain everything right then and there. The late nights, the stress. The years I spent not knowing if the app would fail or take off. The anxiety of seeing numbers grow in my account but not knowing what it meant for my future or for my relationships. But no one was asking about that. They weren't wondering how I built it. They were wondering why I kept it a secret, and the truth. Because the minute people know you have money, they start to look at you differently. I wanted to hold on to the version of me that was just their brother, their son. The guy who helped with dishes, who showed up to birthday parties and gave thoughtful handmade gifts. I didn't want to become the rich one. But now that version of me, the one they knew, was gone, replaced by someone they weren't sure they recognized anymore. And I didn't know how to get him back. The silence felt like a boulder pressing on my chest. And then, finally, someone spoke. My mom broke the silence first. Her voice was soft, calm, but there was a weight behind it that I'd never quite heard before. "Honey," she said gently, with that mom tone that always made me feel like a child again. "Why didn't you tell us? We're family." It was a question, yes, but it was also an accusation, sugar-coated in concern. Before I could even open my mouth, my sister jumped in. "No sugar-coating with her. You're literally sitting on a fortune," she said, her voice rising. "While we're over here drowning in bills. I'm behind on rent. Mom and Dad are still paying the mortgage. And you never offered to help." There. It was the shift. The conversation had gone from shock to resentment in seconds. And I could already see where it was headed. I tried to breathe, tried to stay calm, tried to say something that would make sense. "It's not about not wanting to help," I began. "It's just, I didn't want to be seen as a bank account." Dead silence. That was the wrong thing to say. I could see it instantly on their faces. My sister's mouth curled. My mom looked wounded. My cousin, across the table, just stared at her plate. Then my uncle, who hadn't said a word all night, leaned forward. His voice was low but firm, like a lawyer building a case. "You know your cousin wants to go to college, right?"
he said, glancing toward his daughter.
"Maybe you could cover her tuition, just a few semesters. It's not like it would break you." I blinked. Before I could respond, my mom jumped in again, this time more direct. "And your father and I are still paying off the mortgage," she said. "A small loan would mean the world. Just something to help us finish it off." I looked around the table. Faces I'd known my whole life, familiar, warm, comforting, now felt like strangers. No one asked how I built the business. No one said congratulations. No one even asked if I was okay, just, "What can we get?" I felt my throat tighten, not because I didn't want to help, but because everything I feared about revealing my wealth was now happening in real time. I stood there at the table, while people I loved started mentally dividing up my bank account. Like I was no longer family, I was a financial plan. My aunt, who always brought her famous pie, leaned in. "Even 100,000 would change everything for us," she said casually, like we were talking about borrowing a blender. My cousin finally spoke. "It just feels wrong that you kept this from us. We could have really used your help." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money. This was about expectation, about entitlement, about the belief that because we shared DNA, my success somehow belonged to them too. And part of me got it. I mean, we're family. We've been through stuff together, struggled, sacrificed. We used to split one pizza 5 ways. We grew up with hand-me-downs and dollar store birthday parties, but there's a difference between sharing struggles and demanding a slice of someone's reward. I tried to speak up again, tried to explain. "Look, I've always planned to help. I've been investing. I've been figuring things out. But I needed time. I needed to feel like I could trust that. If I helped, it was because I wanted to, not because I was being pressured into it." My sister rolled her eyes. "Pressured?" she snapped. "No one's pressuring you. We're just asking for a little help." God, do you even hear how selfish you sound? Selfish. That word stung more than it should have. I wanted to remind her of the times I watched her kids for free, so she could go to job interviews, of the groceries I quietly paid for, of the small ways I tried to show love without waving money in anyone's face. But in this moment, none of that seemed to matter. My father, who had been quiet the whole time, finally spoke up. Calm, measured, double quotes. "Son,"
He said, "We're proud of you. We really are.
"but you have to understand, it's hard seeing you sitting there with so much, knowing how we've been struggling. We never wanted to ask, but now that we know, we kind of have to." And there was again that shift from love to leverage. I realized that to them, this wasn't betrayal. To them, this was opportunity. To me, it felt like 1,000 tiny heartbreaks, not because they wanted help, but because they didn't ask how I was doing. Because no one wondered what building this company cost me, mentally, emotionally, Even physically. No one asked about the sleepless nights, the missed holidays, the fear that I was wasting years of my life chasing a dream that could collapse at any moment. All they saw now was the money, and I suddenly felt like I was alone in a room full of people I loved. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm building inside me. My hands were shaking under the table, not from anger but from hurt, from confusion, from the overwhelming pressure of feeling cornered by the very people I had once trusted more than anyone in the world. Look, I began, my voice more fragile than I expected. I'm proud of what I built. I worked hard, I didn't get lucky, I sacrificed a lot. But I've always been the quiet one, the responsible one. I never asked anyone here for anything, not even when things were tough. And now that I've finally succeeded, it feels like that's the only reason I matter to you. My voice cracked a little at the end, but I meant every word. Across the table, forks paused midair. Glasses were gently set down. I could tell some of them didn't like what I said, but even more, they didn't like hearing it. Then my sister snapped. "Oh, please, don't play the victim," she said, scoffing like I was making a scene. "We're your family. You're just being greedy." Greedy. That one word sliced through me like a cold blade. Greedy. After everything I had gone through, after all the times I'd been there for them, after the years of late nights, failed ideas, ramen dinners, and 18-hour workdays. Greedy? I wanted to scream, but instead I sat there, stunned. It wasn't anger that got to me. It was heartbreak. I hadn't even had a chance to process my own success. I had lived in fear of how the world would change once they found out. And now here it was, my nightmare coming to life. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a bank vault with a heartbeat. Was I really being greedy? Or was I just being cautious, protective of what I built, afraid of what would happen if money became the lens through which everyone saw me? I'd always believed that when you make it, you give back. But I also believed it should come from love, not pressure. From choice, not guilt. Now that choice was being stripped away by emotional blackmail, disguised as family. My dad stood up. Not in anger, not to intimidate me, just steady, firm. He always carried himself that way, especially when emotions in the room ran high. "Son,"
he said, his voice low, calm. "We're not mad. We're not attacking you.
we think you could share. That's what families do. We support each other. When one of us is up, we help the ones who are down." I nodded slowly. I understood what he was trying to say. I did, but what they didn't see, what they refused to understand, was that support should be mutual and conditional and built on trust, not assumption. I looked around the table. My mom, wringing her hands in her lap. My sister, glaring, arms crossed. My uncle, eyes down but clearly listening. My cousin, nervously chewing her lip. People I had known since I was a baby. People who taught me how to ride a bike, how to tie my shoes, how to laugh through the hard times. Now they were looking at me like I was guarding their treasure chest, like I was a vault full of stolen dreams that they were finally ready to break. Into that moment broke something inside me. "I get it," I said quietly. "You think I owe you something, because we share blood, because we've sat at the same table year after year. But where was this same energy when I was broke? When I was working 2 jobs just to cover rent and eating noodles 5 nights a week." I paused. No one answered. "When I launched that startup, I did it alone. I didn't ask for help. I didn't take from anyone here. And now that it worked, it suddenly feels like my success is community property." Still, silence. They didn't know how to respond because, deep down, some part of them agreed, and that made it worse. Because I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I wasn't even saying I wouldn't help. I was just asking to be seen as a human. Not a dollar sign. Greedy? I repeated, finally locking eyes with my sister. "That's what you think of me." She didn't answer. "I'm not greedy," I continued, voice firmer now. "I've just learned the hard way that money changes people, and right now I can feel it changing this room. I came here as your brother, your son, your cousin. I'm still him. But now all you see is a number in an app." My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled it back gently. You want help? I understand. But don't come at me with guilt and accusations and call it love. That's not family. That's manipulation. I stood up, not in rage, not to make a scene, just to leave. I'm going to step outside, I said, pushing in my chair, because I don't know what this is anymore. But it's not the Thanksgiving I came for. And with that, I walked out into the cold night air, grateful for the silence. But shattered by the sound of my family's silence behind me. After dinner, I didn't stick around. No hugs. No jokes, no lingering in the living room with coffee and pie, no pretending everything was fine, just silence. I picked up my coat, gave a quiet thanks for dinner, and walked out the door. The cold night hit me like a slap to the face. But honestly, it felt better than the heat from that dining room full of stares and whispered expectations. The walk to my car felt heavier than it should have. I kept thinking maybe someone would follow me, maybe my mom or even my dad. Maybe someone would say, "Hey, I'm sorry," or "Let's talk." No one did. I sat in my car for a few minutes before I turned the key. My hands trembled slightly as I stared at the steering wheel. My chest felt tight, not from anger but from grief. I realized something had ended that night. Something I'd never get back. That night wasn't just the end of a family dinner. It was the end of how I once saw my family, as safe, as simple, as unconditional. Over the next few days, the text started rolling in. At first, it was quiet. No one said anything the next morning, and I figured maybe they were just letting things cool down. But then came the messages. Some were short and sharp. "Still waiting to hear if you'll help us out. Guess now we know who you really are." Others tried to guilt me in a softer tone. "It's just hurtful, you know. We thought we mattered more than money. We're not asking for millions, just some help. Isn't that what family does?"
And
Then, the one that really stung. "Can't believe you've changed so much." But the thing is, I hadn't changed. I'd always been the quiet one, the helper, the guy who showed up, listened, and gave what I could when no one asked. The only thing that changed was the number in my bank account and the way they looked at me once they knew it. I started to question myself. Was I selfish? Was I being cold? Was I really the bad guy here? And then, just when I felt like I was unraveling, I got a text from my grandmother. She's the one who never raises her voice, never takes sides. The one who sends birthday cards with handwritten notes and always remembers your favorite dessert. Her message was short, but it shook me in the best way. "Proud of you. Don't let guilt steal your joy. Help if you want to, not because you feel forced to." I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Because in a sea of demands and expectations, she was the only one who saw me as a person, not a paycheck. That one text. It saved me. Over the next couple of weeks, I had time to breathe, to think, to get grounded again. And eventually, I did help. But on my terms, I sat down with a financial planner, outlined what I felt comfortable doing, and made some quiet decisions. First, I created a small education fund for my cousins, nothing extravagant, but enough to give them a leg up if they wanted to go to college. They didn't even know I was behind it. I preferred it that way. Second, I hired my mom, a financial advisor, not to dump money into her account, but to help her and my dad make smarter choices with what they already had. It was my way of saying, "I believe in you. I trust you. Let me give you the tools to thrive." But I made it clear to everyone else, this wasn't a payday. No loans, no handouts, no family grants, or just this one-time requests. I wasn't doing this out of guilt. I was doing it from love. Quiet, intentional, boundaried love. And if that wasn't enough for them, then maybe they didn't love me. Just the idea of what I could give, that Thanksgiving taught me more than a year of therapy ever could. I learned that money doesn't change you. It changes how people see you. Suddenly, your worth is measured not in love, loyalty, or memories, but in dollar signs. The people who once teased you for being a dreamer, now they want a piece of the dream. The ones who ignored your struggle, now they feel entitled to your success. It was brutal. But it gave me something I didn't have before. Clarity. Clarity about boundaries. Clarity about who truly cared. Clarity about what I was willing to give and what I refused to surrender. no matter how much I had in the bank that Thanksgiving. It ended my innocence, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where I loved without guilt, gave without obligation, and most importantly, protected the life I had built with my own two hands, because success doesn't mean you owe anyone anything, especially not those who only show up after they've seen the size of your wallet. If your family suddenly found out you had millions, would they still treat you the same, or would you become their walking wish list? Let me know in the comments.